Welcome back to the podcast. Today we got Devin Gonzalez with us. He's created a franchise that you guys are going to be really interested in. How to really go out there and do what I believe is some of the things that the community is looking for. The upgraded workout. He's created a franchise process that makes that easy to execute on. I'm excited about having him on the show. Devin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor.
We look at, I want to grow a franchise. People want to go start a business. It's tough. People, they're getting through their brain idea. I want to grow a business. I want to grow it. Right. And then walking through that broken glass for people is insane. They can't quite understand. All right, how am I going to do that? Oh my God, I got all these reasons and justifications and all these considerations that stop them. You have taken all of that out and made this a pretty easy process.
Exactly. So, I would say just like everything that you said, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur these days. It's glorified by the media, and then people go out and try it and they may not be successful at that first attempt, or they don't realize what they're getting into to weather those storms. But I just want you to realize that you're not that special, right? You're not that special enough for it to work out for other people and other people be successful and it not be a reality for you. Just because you didn't hit a home run at your first time at bat doesn't mean you don't get up to the plate again. Remember, you're not that special.
Well, and I think that's the part that it needs to be heard. Like, look, if you follow this process, that's why a franchise like yours is simple to execute on. When I saw the numbers and development costs, look, we build a lot of franchises here at CDO Group. It's amazing the number of brands we work with and all of the founders of these brands. You have taken this process, been able to really look at from what you get from a landlord. Look, you give me a good white box, I can build this out relatively inexpensively and get people into business for a really reasonable amount. It's less than you can borrow from your Aunt Betty.
I don't know if you'd be borrowing that amount from your Aunt Betty, but definitely I get what you mean. The whole process for us was to create the model where it's not crazy in overhead. You don't need to build out everything. You don't need to start, I had someone on the phone the other day asking, do I need to buy a location or, am I building this from the ground up? I'm like, no, like we're going to find a location. We have a real estate team that's going to help execute the best real estate deal that you can get in your given area. But we're trying to look for locations with you that have already pretty much white walls, a ceiling, a bathroom, at least one, right? And then no walls that we really have to take down. If we do have to take down any walls, then hopefully they're just false walls where it's, they're not connected to any studs or beams or anything like that. But our whole thing is to start with the lowest overhead as possible and lowest startup as possible. So you're not digging yourself into a hole that takes you 10 years to get out of.
Well, and that's what happens to people today. The old model was go to college, get your degree, go do that. Now, you start life before you even walked out of college. You're already up to your elbows in alligators and full of debt. And now you want to go be an entrepreneur. Now you got to go do a build out. Now not knowing what you don't know. I watch franchisees do this all the time, make mistakes, and they go out and they try to open their own business. And I can't tell you how many people I watch are working on facilities that they're paying rent on while they're under construction. The amount of work they're going through is just insane. They don't know what they don't know. And what you guys have done is you've taken a team of people and said, look, we're going to make this easy for you. And hold on, I'm not going to say easy because if going to anything, look, growing the idea, right? You got to walk through a little bit of broken glass, even with a franchise system. But I think you guys have created it, and you've taken the cheese grater of development, that cheese grater of your brain, that growing idea. You guys have made it pretty straightforward. You've taken a lot of the angst out of it.
No, definitely. That's the whole thing with coming onto a franchise band. A lot of people get wrapped up in, well, I'm gonna have to pay royalties, right? And like that's the one, thing people like, I'd rather just start my own business. It's like, by all means, if that's the route you want to go, I completely get it, right? I did it, but also you don't know what you don't know, like you said, and there's a lot of mistakes that are around the corner that you have to be willing to weather. And coming onto a franchise system, you essentially are having a coach and a team in your corner to condense your timeline to success. We've already walked the path. We've already made the mistakes. And so we have the blueprint and basically the GPS to get you to that end destination faster.
I'll give you an example. I was working with one of the, with a guy who's starting his new health place. It's a cold plunge, hot sauna cold plunge. And he's a friend of mine, like literally a friend of mine. And, he's like, hey, I'm gonna go build this. I'm like, great. Look, anytime as you go along, give me a call. I'll be happy to help you out. Look, especially when you get to a lease, let's look at it together. And, he calls me, I don't know, 2 months later or 3 months later, he goes, oh, I signed a lease. I'm like, whoa. What happened? Or we talked about you and I talking about that before you get the lease. And all of a sudden I get a copy of his lease. I'm like, you're not, what are you telling me? You paid for this. You signed this lease and the space, today there's kind of different levels of deliveries from a landlord. You kind of get a full white box, right? A full white box kind of gets you that bathroom, the hot water heater, the lights and the ceiling, and in a really clean white box shell, right? You wouldn't go rent a house without an air conditioner. You wouldn't rent a house without electrical, but yet there are guys out there who are renting spaces. We call them, gray shells, right? Some of them have some of the parts, but not all the parts. And so he gets this gray shell, right? There's no ceilings, there's no floor. They left the floor out. And he goes, but I got $20 a square foot, right? They gave me $20 a square foot for my TI allowance. I'm like, great, let's go take a look at this, right? So let's see here. How do you put a ceiling in? It'd been X. How do you put a bathroom in? It would have been Y. Let's go look at the hot water heater. Let's go look at the exhaust. Let's go look at the air conditioner that you're missing, right? It's about $55 to $60 a square foot to get that to white box. I want you to know you just paid the landlord $40 a square foot. You're essentially giving the landlord $40 a square foot, and he didn't even know that. The broker was, so fast to, hey, this is a great deal. It's a great location. You should be lucky to get it. Look, the broker wasn't trying to be malevolent, but the truth is they want a commission. They don't care about your operating expenses or costs. And that's why having someone like you in their pocket that understands the real estate deal. Look, this is the white box. If I get everything in that white box, that letter, that work letter that I get from the landlord, I can build out your facilities for a fraction of the cost compared to what this guy got.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing too. And I tell my franchisees, look, we have a brokerage that we're partners with. I was like, their goal essentially is to find you a location, negotiate in the location. But at the end of the day, when is the last time you heard a real estate agent or a real estate broker tell you it's a bad deal? Right. At the end of the day, they do want their commission. So my team, my internal team is there to be that, basically checks and balances and making sure that you're not just getting forced into a deal and being told that this is the best deal on the table. Right. That's why we do 3 LOIs. That's why we do negotiations, and our internal team is CC'd on every email so that as the brokerage is negotiating, we're also getting to check it too. So that if we do need to step in and be like, hey guys, do more work,
That's right.
Go to bat than they do.
Well, let's go back to that thing you just said that rings in my ear, that you're negotiating on 3 locations at a time, right? I can't tell you how many franchisees that I look at and they're so excited about getting a business. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to go to business. They want to quit their job and go jump in their business. And I'm like, no, let's take a deep breath. Let's just take a deep breath here. And not that I'm slowing things down, but let's think about this, right? You got income coming in right now. Let's start negotiating with multiple locations so that we're not emotionally tied to any one of them, right? At the end of the deal, we want the right location, but we also want the right price, right? I can't tell you how many people have spent, just like my friend I was talking about, you're spending several, thousands and thousands of dollars above what they should have spent. Now that's going to handicap your year one economics, right? It really does impact your ability to stay functional, as that's a lot of cash out of your pocket. So we're working on multiple deals at the same time, so we're negotiating on all the fronts. So what we get as a deliverable, plus our rent numbers, right, to make sure that our rents are reasonable, and the lease terms themselves, right? Because all of those, start you off with a good deal, a bad deal, and I think that's why you need a franchisor like this, Devin, to go through this and understand that real estate deal well. And now you got a partner on your side.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the thing, is like negotiating on 3 does help because now you have leverage, right? A landlord doesn't want to give you TI, tenant improvement, and you're like, well, you let them know, okay, that's awesome. Thank you for your response. This property over here is giving us, X amount. And all of a sudden now you have the ball's in your court, right? To kind of play a little bit. But if you're married to a location, then you start just saying okay to things. You're like, I'll make it work. And it's like, why would you just make it work and kind of, basically handicap yourself in the beginning when that's one of the biggest expenses? Because that's going to be the 10-year expense, the 20-year expense, and hopefully, you know, for a lifetime. So make that a good deal, because that's the one that, you know, you can't just uproot and go to a new location. There's another cost that comes with that.
Well, I think most of these entrepreneurs don't understand the art of the real estate deal yet, right? So they don't know that they can negotiate on these items. I mean, my buddy, look, he's a smart guy. He really is. He's a really, really smart guy, serial entrepreneur. But when it comes to real estate, he has no ideas, right? So now he's got a broker who, really nice broker. I'm not saying the broker is a mean guy, but he's not, you know, he's not working out for him. He's looking out for his commission. Now he signs this deal. Now we got to start working on the construction schedule, our construction drawings, our construction schedule, and going to bid and finding bidders. You know, one of the best things we figured out with him was we went to bid and we found some great architect, got a great number on the architectural, which it wasn't about the cheapest architect. It was about finding the right architect who knew the marketplace. We met with the building department, right? We went through and really understood what they wanted. So we submitted plans. We had plans back. We had our permit in 2 weeks, which was amazing, right? That's unheard of. And how that happened was all just a product of knowing how to go down to the building department and talking to the city in advance. We met with the building inspector on site before we even submitted the plan, so they knew what we were talking about. They did a walkthrough of our plans and the drawings, and all of that made a difference by the speed by which we were able to get the construction process going, which ultimately will have him open up faster. Now, he's paying rent during construction, which to me is a no, right? I mean, that's a big handicap. You figure he's got, $5,000-$6,000 a month in rent for the space that he's renting. That, if he goes 4 months, that's a, $25,000 to $30,000 expense that he's coming out of his pocket. And there's no customers, there's no nothing, there's no benefit to that other than, I got construction time, right? So it's right off the get-go, it's a killer. So I think that's one of the ones where having a franchise group like you that's got some real estate experts in their pocket to help support the franchisees as they go through that is awesome.
No, definitely. And I think that for me is one of the biggest things. Like the free rent, gives you some leeway to build out, for us, order equipment, to get the walls wrapped and everything installed. Because our locations are 2,000 to 3,500 square feet. Let's say, you're paying $6,000, minus cam charges, right? Just $6,000 for rent. That starts to add up if you're paying that for the 4 months that construction's happening, if needed, right? While equipment and all that kind of stuff is coming out, you're $24,000 into, your business, and you haven't even been able to open yet. So like for us, the average free rent that we've seen is about 180 days. In most cases. Now, with that being said, that was one of the mistakes when I opened my first location, was not doing it the right way, right? And that was why we brought in the real estate team. We got, I think it was 120 days, but then really didn't get TI, didn't really know about, inspecting HVACs and all that kind of stuff. So all the mistakes that I went through that first-time business owners don't know what they don't know, I've changed it and implemented that into the franchise system, so someone else doesn't have to be forged by that fire.
That's right, and that's what you're buying when you're buying a franchise group, right? You're buying a group of experts that guide you through that. Now as we go through the real estate deal, now we get through the architectural deal and get our drawings submitted, get a permit, right? And understanding that and having someone guide you through that. At CDO Group, we do a lot of the construction management for folks and helping them, guiding them through that piece right there. Now we go out to bid. Now, how do we work with different architects or different contractors? I can't tell you how many times I work with a franchisee or an entrepreneur, and they're like, "Oh, I got my Uncle Bob. He'll do it." And I'm like, "Look, Uncle Bob may be great. He may have built a house or two or a barn or whatever he's done, but does he understand commercial real estate or construction? Does he understand how to do and find the subcontractors, right? Because what's going to matter really big here is that we know people that know how to do construction on commercial projects in a timely fashion, right? We don't deserve we won't have a predictable delivery or an opening date if we don't find the right subcontractors. If we find, the wrong electrician, the wrong plumber, that can kill a schedule dramatically, right? And I've watched the horror stories of people who are 5, 6, 7 months waiting for an electrician who just wasn't qualified or made so many mistakes that the city wouldn't pass inspection with them, right? Just kept going back at them. Just were the wrong people. Not that the franchisee or the entrepreneur wasn't meaning well, but Uncle Bob or whoever the person was that they thought was the right person wasn't. And that in itself can cause a huge amount of brain damage before you ever open.
No, definitely. And I mean, even things as small, let's say, as the signage out front, right? Some landlords will have requirements on the signage, right? And this is one of the things where even though our team sent over, 3 local sign people for them to do the channel letters and everything, the first quote that he got, he was like, "This isn't bad price. Like, can you send the vector logo and so we can do it?" And I was like, "I'll send it once you call the other 2." Right. And it's like, they all can do this. This is the same exact thing. It's not a hard job, but I need you to call 3 and I want you to tell me why you want to go with, whichever of the 3 that you want to go with. I need you. So everything is comparing, just like rent we do, or the LOIs, we do 3. Every single vendor or subcontractor get 3 bids minimum.
That's right.
Right.
And that's why we go to the 3 GCs. Like, look, all 3 of them are going to compete against each other. Now, we don't need more than 3. I mean, some guys are like, I could get 5. I'm like, that. Let's not waste people's time. Mm-hmm. Get 3 good contractors that you'd work with, any of them, right? Find people that you interview them, spend good time meeting them on site, talking about your project, looking them in the eye. Make sure you, as a franchisee or the owner, you would do business with any of them before you even do any bidding with them. Don't just grab someone and put them on your bid list. It's just, it's not very fruitful for you or valuable, right? So once you get through that piece right there, there's a big gift, right? And now let's talk a little bit about all the material and equipment stuff that needs to happen, because this could be another one. I can't tell you how many projects I've watched go through the brain damage of ordering material too late, right? Not having the stuff you need when you need it, or ordering stuff too early.
I mean, for us, we order the equipment actually pretty early, in terms of knowing that, in my experience, fitness equipment, there's delays, there's wait times on certain pieces of equipment, or for some reason, shipping can be an issue depending on the piece of equipment, right? And we don't have like huge things like squat racks or bench presses or anything like that, but still, barbells you can't send that, in USPS, right? So sometimes delivery people show up, and if you're not at location, they won't leave it outside. They won't leave it with your neighbor. So they take it back. And in some cases that has happened, they ship it back to the manufacturer, right? So we order all that in the beginning so that if there is any discrepancies, we have a time frame to essentially get it to the location. But we do have preferred vendors for all the equipment to make it easy, but we don't have any custom, racks, that weight racks or anything like that, because again, our goal is essentially to open with lowest cost available. And a dumbbell to me is a dumbbell. Like, I don't need color branded dumbbells, logo branded dumbbells, like for you to pay an extra $1 a pound just to have, a cool logo on the side. Right. So we do have that, as well as some other resources. Like, if you find it cheaper and it looks like this, grab it. Right.
As you look back over the stuff you've done to grow this brand, what was the biggest, leap of faith you took in your career, and how did it pay off for you?
I will say the biggest leap of faith essentially was opening the gym, because I was a personal trainer, had a personal training company, and to launch the gym and everything like that, I pretty much had to fully transition. So I did have to burn the boats to essentially go from it. So, making 6 figures to nothing right out the gate was definitely a stretch. But then the next real big step, especially even for franchisees, is hiring your employees and realizing that this is what scaling a business takes, is hiring a team that you trust, but also letting them do the job that you hired them to do. Just because they may be doing it a little slower than you, or you're like, I don't want to explain it right now, I can just do it in 5 minutes. Realize if you don't teach them, that 5 minutes starts to compound over time. Like, just show them. It might take them 10 minutes this time. They get faster at it, and now that's a thing off of your plate. But giving the keys to the gym and all that kind of stuff can be a little bit stressful, especially in the beginning, because it's your baby. You just spent the last 4 months, 5 months building this out, and now it's like you have to actually let the business do what it's meant to do.
It's funny when growing employees has got to be one of the toughest things for an entrepreneur, because look, I mean, it's your money, you're engaged in it. Now you got to worry about, they're going to mess up. But I can't tell you exactly what you talked about. I can't tell you how many times I've made that mistake where I think I'm always pointing out what they're doing wrong, instead of training them and going, hey, I'm accountable for what's going on wrong. It's my fault, right? If as owner, I'm accountable for their training. And sometimes We don't do a great job of putting processes in place to make people successful. And when I take it on the other way and say, hey, look, I'm accountable for their success, right? If something's going wrong, it's my fault. When I start with that behavior, right, it really does change the ability for those people to be successful. And look, ultimately, you're looking for people that can do the work for you, right? The power of one is miserable, right? If you have to do all the work, you don't really have a business. You really have a really really expensive job, and finding the ability to have other people run your business is really what you're looking for.
No, I agree. And that's what I tell people too when they're coming on, is like when we're getting into the hiring steps of our process, it's realizing that even before they come on, talking to them, are you looking to be hands-on, or do you want to be a manager kind of, franchisee? Either way works. I just need to know, the kind of conversations we're going to have. And that's the thing, is that some people want to fully transition. By all means, your whole goal is to not have to, be married to the business and be a slave to the business. Your goal is so that, yeah, you might be a little more hands-on now, but if you want to be a little more hands-off, you have that freedom to do so. Right. And so that is one of the most stressful things is building a team, because you have to have the mindset, like you said, it's almost like the dichotomy of leadership, or if the team isn't doing well, most cases, it's not the team. Right. And you have to put your ego aside and be, realize that not every great athlete makes a great coach, but they can be developed into a great coach. Right. So that's why we kind of help with that part too. And we're making sure that we're training managers, we're training franchisees how to manage as well, and how to be a leader, right? Because leading from the back and just telling, ordering everyone to do something isn't the way to get someone to want to do something. You have to realize that you're selling your team on why the process should be done this way. Right. And something that you mentioned about, systems and processes, having SOPs, that was one of the things when we started off as well. I realized this, it was almost like a light bulb for me. It was, common sense is only common to the person that knows it. Right. And when that thought came to my mind, it was because I stepped away to start building the infrastructure of the franchise. All of a sudden the business took a little dip, and I was like, guys, what is happening? And then they're like, I'm trying to figure out X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, it's easy. You do A, B, and C. And they're like, no one taught us that. I was like, it's common sense. And they're like, in what world? And I was like, dang, in my world. That's right. Because it's like, right. So that's common sense is only common to the person that knows it. So that's why you got to make sure that you do have systems and processes that you are teaching your team. And if your team doesn't know how to do something, make sure you show them. And sometimes you have to show them in a different way, because the way you're showing them, it may make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to them.
There was a training course I went through called the communication course, where, they went through such basic steps to train people. And what I loved about it was it really did leave people inspired, right? Even though, a lot of training has you drink off a fire hose. Welcome to the training. Here, come drink off a fire hose. This training was all about little tiny steps. Like one of them was literally just sitting in a chair. One of the steps was learning to sit in a chair. And the other one was, in these small little lifts along the training. The trainer really believed in, rather have 100 small steps than these big giant swatches that left people kind of less empowered, right? As you put those SOPs in process, as you put those, put together, how do you start to develop that in ways that really inspire people, leave them full of energy?
I mean, I like to start with the reason why we're doing it this way, right? Understanding why you're doing something before you do it makes it make a lot more sense, and you're a little more engaged on trying to learn the process, right? If I just tell you to go, take out the trash and do this and do that, and then all of a sudden you're just like, man, these are just chores, right? But then all of a sudden, if I tell you beforehand, hey, first impressions, everything, would you agree? And they're like, yeah. And like, okay, perfect. So like when you come into the gym, like the first thing that you see right by the side is the trash can, right? What kind of impression does that give? We want to make sure that, someone wants to be inspired, right? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. So I was like, so let's make sure we take out the trash, and you say the end process, the reason why first, and then you deliver the step-by-step part, because then they're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Perfect. Well, let me ask you this. What do you believe is the big shift you have from becoming, a personal trainer to becoming a CEO?
realizing that you do need a team, right? Because when you're a personal trainer, that you're wearing every hat, right? You can't really hire another personal trainer if you're a personal trainer, because then you kind of just get your client taken, right? But when you're running a business or any business, like, you have to have a team, and you have to realize that your team is going to have different personality types. If you've ever read the book of, the 5 love languages, same kind of thing applies for employees, right? Some people want to spend time with you because you're the owner, you're the head, they look up to you. Some people just want to be noticed for the hard work that they're putting in. And some people, want that compliment. Some people want, monetary, bonuses, so forth, but not everyone's motivated by the same thing. Right. And which was crazy to me as a newer business owner, because I would assume that everyone was, kind of geared towards the money motivator, but that's not the case. Right. Sometimes just telling someone, wow, I noticed you're putting in all this work, and, it's amazing. And all of a sudden you see them light up, and then their energy is now 10x on the floor because they want another one of those.
It's awesome. Devin Gonzalez, you are an amazing entrepreneur. The brand you're growing, Strive 11, excuse me, is just growing leaps and bounds. If people want to get involved with you and jump into your brand, how do they do it?
You can go to strive11fitness.com /franchise.
Awesome. And what's the best way for them to cut? So strive11.com.
Fitness.com.
Strive11fitness.com. I'll put all the contact stuff down below. Get involved with it. Look, it's amazing. The numbers on these facilities are off the hook, right? Your investment to return on investment. These are some of the fastest ROIs I've seen yet. I brought him on because I think it's just a phenomenal look, a phenomenal gym. The work he's doing on these are quite amazing. So I'd love for you guys to get involved. Go jump out there and meet Devin and really get involved with Strive 11 and see yourself in your own little fitness franchise and watch how you can grow. It's quite amazing. Well, Devin, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Grateful today. Audience members, last week we had some crazy numbers. It was 41,000 people that came on. We had we broke 68,000 subscribers on YouTube last week. It was quite amazing. I'm grateful for all of you guys. We noticed that a lot of you made it to the end of the podcast last week, but weren't subscribers. If you could take a second and like and subscribe and do that now, it means the world to us. It gets us great guests like Devin on to speak about his great franchise, and the numbers do make a difference. So if you could do that now, I'd be grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.